Orange and blue today. Cecil Lammey, Andrew Mason, NFL draft. Mace, did you have a restful night, my friend?
Kind of. Didn't get to sleep for a while, and then was up this morning. I had a very restful nap.
Okay.
And that's planning ahead because it's going to be a long day's journey in tonight. Of course, we get to day 2 of the draft started here in about 90 minutes or so. And the Broncos probably won't go on the clock until, unless they make a trade, they'll go. If they stand pat, they'll go on the clock somewhere around 7:30, 7:45 Mountain Time. So it's going to be a lot of hurry up and wait, and then it's gonna hit like a freight train.
It is
when it happens.
67, 68, if that's where they pick. But
Big
with the talent available, something that I wrote about at denversports.com, Mace. What I've been telling everybody today is, yeah, they're 67 to 68. I don't think they're going to pick there. I think they move into somewhere in the 50s because this talent is too good. We can go over the names. We can go over kind of the latest buzz of where people think the Broncos will draft. It's actually a center position that's getting some buzz right now for the Denver Broncos. But do they move up? Are they like George and Wheezy moving on up?
I think they move up and they move down. I think.
Wait a second, what?
What I'm saying is, I don't think they pick at either 67 or 68.
Okay.
I think they move up from 67, package the 4th round pick. I'm going to do it like in Wayne's World. Come back through Chicago on the way to Detroit. Yeah, they're going to go up from 67 into the 50s, and they're going to go back from 68 because I think it'll take the 4th round pick to get from 67 to 50 something. That's okay. A pretty fair deal if you go by the various draft value charts. So I think they'll use that 4th round pick and then get into the 2nd round. And then 68, they'll use that, move back in the 3rd round and get a 4th round pick perhaps for that. And maybe even another trade beyond that. Because I don't think George Paton, even though it's a Sean Payton show, I don't think George Paton wants to only have 4 picks in this draft.
No.
So I think that, the two of them, maybe they work out a little bit of a deal to say, okay, we'll go up and get a guy we want here, but we're going to push back from 68 and at least get back to a total of 5 picks and then work on expanding that maybe later on in day three as it goes on.
Yeah, day 3 expansion possibility. Also, the undrafted free agents, I think, are going to be thick for this team as they can be. So the talent available, I wrote about it, denversports.com. Luke Musgrave is possibly the target of the Miami Dolphins. It was my worry. It was my concern when I had learned that they were wanting Albert Okwuegbunam, depending on who they get in this draft. From what I've gathered, not from Miami people, but just from people that would know that are not in Miami, I want to make that clear. It seems like Musgrave might be their target. And that's unfortunate because that could be the Broncos' target, especially if he does fall to where Miami's sitting, because Miami is later in the 2nd round today.
Yeah, and then it becomes a matter of, all right, if he's Miami's target and you can't get him, then do you go another position? And then maybe do you wait even longer on tight end? That's where if you go up from 67 and then you're going, say you're going for the center position, for example, or you're going for an edge rusher. And then from 68, if you go back, the question is there going to be enough tight end talent there on a high level to move back? And that's going to depend on how the tight ends end up falling in the draft, when there's a run today. If there's a run today, it might not look like wide receiver yesterday where you had 4 picks and maybe it's in a row. Maybe you're talking about tight ends kind of going off the board, bit by bit. And then when the Broncos pick at 68, if they're looking to move down, if they have already moved up by that point from 67, at 68, do you think, okay, there's 3 tight ends that we like left? Can we move down 12 or 15 picks and get one of those guys?
Yeah, the Broncos could be on the move. We'll talk about the domino effect of the top of the 2nd round. Pittsburgh's fielding a lot of calls right now, and teams, Raiders, Rams, I've been told, expressing interest in Will Levis. That's a conversation a little bit later. But let's talk about something I didn't think would happen, because I even kind of made fun of it, which I guess I should know better, Mace, when I was like, there's no way. I see mocks that have the Broncos getting the best center in this class. Now I think it's Joe Tippmann. But now the buzz today is John Michael Schmitz is likely to be a target of the Denver Broncos. So the center position, not really a curveball, something we have talked about, but because no centers have gone, now that could lead to that talent falling and someone like Tippmann being there or John Michael Schmitz being there, or they're enough to move up for.
Yeah, the question is, are you happy with one or the other, or is it only John Michael Schmitz that you're happy with? That I think is the question. If you're happy with one or the other, that gives you a little bit more flexibility. I always caution against getting locked into one player. You like to have two, maybe even three possibilities if you're looking at a position, and that allows you to avoid making a deal where you get fleeced a little bit. If you're moving up, you say, okay, we have to have that guy. It can be dangerous to say, especially in the second or third round, that we have to have one guy.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, if there is fire to the smoke of everything at center, this is telling us something about Lloyd Cushenberry and whether they see him or don't see him as someone who'd start. Because if you move into the second round and pick a center, guess what? That guy's probably your week one starter.
Yeah. And then what happens to Lloyd Cushenberry? We're left to speculate, but you always say, watch what they do,
right?
Not what they say.
Does he become somebody you look to trade in day 3 and get back a 7th round pick, a sixth or 7th round pick? The value on Cush is probably going to be pretty minimal. Last year of his rookie deal does not rank highly in a bunch of the various metrics. So you'd have to find the right spot. I'm not sure a team would look at Lloyd Cushenberry and say, okay, he is immediately stepping in as a starter. I think they'd look at him to compete for a job, and basically you're getting a late round pick, if that, back for him.
Now, John Michael Schmitz from Minnesota, if he is the Broncos' target, wherever they're going to pick here on day 2, he's a power player. He's strong. He understands leverage. He has bad feet. So for me, it's why Joe Tippmann was the best center. Mm-hmm. Again, my rankings have Tippmann, the Wisconsin product, and they're both about the same size, although Tippmann is 6'6", 313, a concern when the interior offensive line are that tall, but he also has much better footwork than Schmitz, who really relies on his power to win at the point.
Yeah, now power might suit what Sean Payton and Zach Strief are looking for, but if you're looking for the total package, I think Joe Tippmann's the better call, and I think Tippmann also comes to the NFL at a bit more advanced of a level and being able to do well as a rookie. Not that Schmitz can't do well as a rookie. I just think Tippmann is a little bit more ready to go and be a plug-and-play. Schmitz, you might have to live with some mistakes. The interesting thing also on Tippmann, you mentioned the height, 6'6", right? So 5'11" quarterback, 6'6" center. You know, you generally you're throwing to lanes, but that may not mix in terms of what you want to do on the interior offensive line in front of Russell Wilson.
Which brings into the conversation, should they be drafting based on Russell Wilson if he only has 1 year left here? Like, for me, my mind goes, Tippmann's the better prospect long-term, because feet don't get better at center. Like, maybe a little bit. I don't want to get into semantics with people, but, like, feet don't get better. Tippmann is the total package, and I'm thinking, like, Russell Wilson, but I'm also thinking of whoever the next quarterback's going to be.
It's funny. I was having this conversation about the draft, and I was talking about feet, and I was talking about footwork, and I was talking about tackles. And my daughter, who does a lot of like Irish dancing, like the river dance kind of thing, walks in. Well, the thing is, I was talking about quick feet, right? Quick feet, you've got or you don't. You can't develop quick feet in the NFL. That's something that's got to be part of your game. If you're lead-footed and you get to the league, you're not going to all of a sudden become what Jack Del Rio would call a dancing bear out there.
Right.
It's not going to happen. And so I think that's a very valid concern on Schmitz, because and also when you're looking at these players, you're always looking at, okay, they have these traits. Is a weakness something that can be turned into a strength, or at least reach a passable level with coaching? Unfortunately, with Schmitz, I don't think the footwork is going to get much better with coaching.
Right.
Because this is more a natural ability and balance thing rather than something that is technique and can be taught.
And I would feel better if Mike Munchak was here. Nothing against Zach Strief at all whatsoever. We have yet to see what he's going to do as the Broncos offensive line coach. Munchak could help. With Strief, we don't know. It's an unknown. And for me, again, I'm not thinking I have to draft for Russell Wilson, because I'm not even sure he's going to be here next year.
You shouldn't be drafting for anybody, really. You should be just get the best players.
And it's Tippmann.
Yeah, exactly. Get the best players and figure it out. And it's actually, if they do go in this direction. Now, look, Tippmann could end up being off the board and render this conversation immaterial, right?
Yes, right.
And frankly, I would be okay with Schmitz early in round 3. I think the value isn't quite there. I would trade up for Tippmann. I wouldn't trade up for Schmitz. And I'm taking my Wisconsin bias out of it here, even though I always say if you've got 2 offensive linemen that are tied on all fronts, you go with the Wisconsin guy.
Yeah, and I don't mean to helmet scout, and it's not helmet scouting.
That's not helmet scouting. That's about the teaching they get.
Yes, it's the teaching, it's the system, it's what they do. And
for generations.
I don't even think Schmitz and Tippmann are close. You're not saying that either, but I agree with you. Like, yeah, you want Wisconsin offensive linemen. This just makes too much sense, but we're not hearing as much on Tippmann as we are on Schmitz now.
Right, and so, but maybe some of that is due to maybe the expectation that Tippmann is just going to be out of reach. I mean, you look when you look at most of the best available analyses from today, and Tippmann's on that list. I mean, if you're coming down to it, I would say Tippmann is pretty firmly in my top 10 of best available. I'd say probably as high as I kind of go back and forth between him and Joey Porter Jr. on my rankings. I'd say he's 5 or 6 on my best available. Schmitz, I think you're getting down to the 20s to the mid to round 30 in terms of best available. That's fine in terms of the value of where the Broncos are picking at 67. I just don't know if he's going to be if he's the guy that you should be saying we're going to move up and sacrifice draft capital to get him when you've got plenty of needs on the roster as well.
I'll put this to you, and again, nothing against Schmitz if he's the pick, and I really didn't have a problem with him other than he doesn't have good feet. Jet Patterson is a player I'd rather take in the 5th round.
Yeah.
Than perhaps even moving up for Schmitz. That's just me and the studying I've done, but Tippmann as a 3rd rounder, Patterson as a 5th rounder, and the tools you have to work with Patterson, which includes the ability to pull and get out in space and hit his man, I find those much more agreeable to the future of this team than Schmitz, who, again, attitude, power, aggression, you have some good things with Schmitz, but maybe some of the parts that you need at most, he doesn't have.
Now, let me ask you this, though. Do you think Schmitz is an upgrade on Lloyd Cushenberry?
Well, attitude-wise, yes. Attitude-wise, yes. Athleticism, no, but we don't really see. Lloyd's just been disappointing in his time as the starting center.
And now he's not a fit for what the Broncos want to do.
Right.
Because you need somebody that has power to his game, and that has long been the weakness of Cushenberry. I think back to when I watched Cush at the Senior Bowl back in 2020, one of the last things before COVID kind of shut down the world for a while. And the thing that jumped out, it wasn't that Cushenberry had a lot of power, it was that he was persistent. He could hang in there, but it was more about kind of the grit he had than the physical power that he possessed. And unfortunately for him, he's been exposed more than a few times over the years, although it didn't do him any favors to start with that the Broncos in 2020 went with the young QB, young center pairing, which I think is generally a mistake. If you're going to have a young center, you want a vet quarterback. Like Matt Paradis, first year as a starter, Peyton Manning is his quarterback.
Right.
That's fine, but you don't want a center and a QB growing together. You want a veteran QB, young center, or veteran center, young QB. I got that completely.
That's the combination that you want.
Either way, you don't want both to be young. You can have one or the other be learning on the job, but not both, ideally.
Watching the West, it's Orange and Blue today, presented by Sean Honda, Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason, day 2 of the 2023 NFL Draft. And Watching the West is something that you had written up last night at denversports.com. We're watching not only what the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Raiders did in the first round, but then anticipating what they could do in the second round. And it kind of ties into my next topic of domino effect. But the Will Levis trade, the Raiders, Colts now, Jim Irsay, didn't he take to Twitter and was like, hey, what'd you think we got Will Levis, everybody? Like, what? What are you doing, Jim Irsay? perhaps drinking some cold beverages, which is fine, but like, okay, why are you going to Twitter to ask your fans if you'd like Will Levis in the second round? But the Raiders could be a team, and the Rams that are trying to move up with Pittsburgh. My soft spot of me wants to go like Joey Porter Jr. in Pittsburgh would be pretty damn cool.
Mm-hmm.
But DeJuan Jones there at the top of the two. But like I could see someone giving enough to the Steelers to move into that spot to take Will Levis, who decided not to go to the draft on day 2, unlike Drew Lock in Nashville, unlike Geno Smith in New York City.
Well, Levis had said something in his pro day that he didn't want to go to the draft in the first place if he knew that he might fall. So he actually was on the record expressing a reluctance to go be a part of that process in person if he had the exact experience that he ended up having last night. So I can't blame him for stepping back. Raiders are at pick 38, and of course the Steelers go on the clock at 32 because there were only 31 first round picks. Raiders at 38, Rams 36. Haven't heard any buzz about the Seahawks and what they might do, but you wonder if the Seahawks are more in the Hendon Hooker conversation than the Will Levis conversation.
Yes.
Because if all this is happening around Levis and somebody's moving up for him and making a trade with the Steelers or the Cardinals, the Seahawks may be able to sit there at 37, get Hendon Hooker, and call it a day.
As Yoda says, there is another, and Mace, you'll like this. Maybe you won't like it. I think you will like it. I've heard that Tampa Bay wants to move up for Hendon Hooker. Mm-hmm. They're at 50, I believe, top of my head. So they'd have some more movement to do than Seattle. But it seems like this quarterback conversation, whether it's Levis or Hooker, that's going to have that domino effect that's going to change a lot of the rest of the second round of the draft.
Yeah, basically, I think we can take the Broncos out of the conversation, even though it was a fun speculative thing to have over the last couple of months. Well, what if he fell? He's not going to fall enough to be part of the conversation. I think we'll see both of them go off the board in the first 10 to 15 picks of this round, whether it's by a trade or a team standing pat, and then that's going to be it, calling it a day. Hooker actually, he makes sense for Tampa Bay because with Baker Mayfield, they've given themselves a cushion to be patient.
Yes.
And also in that division, we talked about it last night with Carolina. We can say the same thing with Tampa Bay. It's such a lousy division that if you can channel Baker Mayfield and get him close to where he was back in Cleveland in 2020, or even get the Baker Mayfield that was playing reasonably well for the Rams down the stretch last year, as the Broncos saw firsthand on Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. If you get that Baker Mayfield, you can do the slow roll with Hendon Hooker. Mm-hmm. And that would align perfectly, I think, with what Tampa Bay's trying to do. So he'd make a lot of sense for them.
Spencer in the chat room asks, what about DTR from UCLA? I expect him to be a day 3 pick.
Yes.
And perhaps on the Broncos' radar. Of course, George Payton, a Bruin himself, and we saw Dorian Thompson-Robinson down at the Shrine Bowl where I thought he performed the way he should have. His film matched his in-person, which is always like, okay, just check that box off. Like, okay, he looks like he did on film.
Good conversation to have. I think you should get into round 5.
Yes.
As a prospect. I think that's the sweet spot for him. But I think as we get into day 3, you're gonna see some of the names popping up. You're gonna see DTR. You're gonna see Aiden O'Connell. You're gonna see Max Dugan. I think there are going to be some conversations had. And even if the Broncos have a scarcity of picks, now again, if they do pick John Michael Schmitz, I think they look to move Lloyd Cushenberry. If Miami doesn't get Luke Musgrave, maybe Albert O is on the move, and you're getting a tight end there. But if there are paths for the Broncos to get more picks to where they could go from 5 to 7, and then at that point it's more reasonable to rationalize, all right, let's take a flyer on a quarterback here in round 5 or round 6. They're going to add to that room, whether it's late in the draft or as a priority undrafted free agent. There is going to be another quarterback in that room. Sorry, Jarrett Garantano, you're going to get competition.
Yeah, you're going to get competition, and you're going to be not playing for the Denver Broncos.
The question, is it competition or is it the nudge?
Yes,
to the door.
The nice nudge
that
out the door.
Garantano's going to get.
Yeah, so it's Orange Blue today, presented by Sean Ponda, Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason. Got about 10 minutes left in today's show. The conversation about Hendon Hooker, I think we should put to bed. Nice to think about. Not
It was
unlikely
fun.
to happen. But there are others. We've talked about Musgrave. Andre Carter's still there. I mean, just if you look over the day two talent, and everyone's got a best of the rest list that's out, and my list was a little bit smaller. I highlighted, I believe, 5 or 6 players. But if you look at the talent at edge, at safety, no safety was taken in day one. Like, there's so much here. I'm going to kind of be a little bit pissed off if the Broncos aren't at least a little bit active. I think if you're as active as like the Bills did, you can wait. And let's say you're at 67, you get to 60 phone calls. Like, do what Buffalo did. Buffalo wasn't crazy and move up in front of Green Bay so they could get Dalton Kincaid. They waited, and then jumped Dallas so that they could get Dalton Kincaid. I feel the Broncos should be doing something like that, but this is not the day to rest on your laurels if you're the Broncos.
No, and I think I was thinking about this when I wrote in here. When they made their draft board.
Sounds like you rode in on a horse.
Maybe I did, yeah. You know, a lift.
Rope and ride Broncos.
Howdy, partner. Let me whisked away to Delaware here if we're not careful. But they construct their draft board, right? And what Sean Payton said and George Payton said was that they did every position and then individually. And then they said, okay, how does player X from this position stack up with player Y from another position? Well, we've only seen one tight end go off the board. We haven't seen a center. We haven't seen a safety. So if the board continues following that way, does it behoove you to come out and say, all right, maybe we can get one of the 2 best centers and maybe we can get one of the 2 best safeties? Now, it's not a banner class for each, but at least you're getting the pick of this year's litter.
Yeah, you're getting an Alabama safety if you're getting one of the top 2 because both of them are from Alabama.
Yes, exactly.
Jordan Battle and Brian Banks.
Yeah. So, and I mean, you could also, if you go to safety 3, safety 4, maybe have the conversation about Sidney Brown out of Illinois in there as well.
Okay.
So.
I thought you were going to say Skinner for a second. I was like,
no,
not Skinner.
No.
Okay. All right.
No. But there's, so would you rather have center 2 or tight end 7?
Center 2.
Fair conversation to have, even though this is a very deep tight end class.
Yeah, and I think that's the conversations that the Broncos themselves are having, George Payton and company having right now. You've got to be ready to move. And I think the guys we're all talking about, the leftovers from day one, within the first 10 picks, they'll be snapped up.
Yeah, exactly. Now, it gets more interesting as we go another step further when we talk about Schumacher, the tight end out of Michigan, who I think will be there.
Yes, I've had him as a 4th round pick, so he'll be there at 67.
He'll be there, and the question is, could you get him by moving back 10 to 15 spots if you have to trade up and then pick up a 4th round pick to recoup the draft capital? I mean, these are conversations you should have, but you should have. I do think though, if I'm making a prediction tonight, the Broncos are making 2 trades.
2 trades.
2 trades tonight.
Okay, and you say one up, one down.
One down.
Okay.
I feel very confident in that prediction.
Like, turn on the light switch. It's up, it's down. It's on, it's off.
Or what was it, Homer Simpson when he's in the hospital? Bed goes up, bed goes down. Bed goes up, bed goes down. And of course, when my daughter had to be in the hospital briefly at one point, and we watched that clip on YouTube, and of course she's like, "Bed goes up, bed goes down, bed goes up, bed goes down."
Yeah, yeah.
No, but yeah, that's the Broncos. Go up, go down. They're going to be busy, and that plays into like George Payton doing what he wants to do. He loves to be the wheeler dealer. He loves to get on the phone. He loves to make those deals.
Right.
And the thing that he's going to try to do, the other thing is, he's going to try to get an extra throw-in pick on a deal. So, like for example, let's say the Broncos are moving up into the 50s from 67. The deal that George Payton would like to make would be, yeah, you give up your 4th round pick to move up, but you get a 7th round pick back as well as the pick in the 50s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you start, and then that's how you kind of start rebuilding the overall number of picks to get it where George Payton wants it to be. I think George Paton, when all is said and done, wants to have 7 total picks over the course of this draft. He's got 5 right now.
Filling out that draft board.
But the thing is, if you move up and you get a 7th-round pick back, then it's basically 2 picks for 2 picks. It's a push. And then you use pick 68 to move down and start adding to the overall number of picks, and you start getting it to where George Paton wants it to be. I think if he ends up with 7 picks out of this draft, as Siri says something and found something, I think hopefully that'll make Siri very happy. It'll make George Paton very happy too.
Siri, are you working for the government? Is she going to answer me?
No.
She'll only answer you. Okay. She won't
Siri,
say.
are you working for the government?
Sorry, I don't understand.
Obviously. Plausible deniability.
Exactly.
Huh?
All right. Any sort of small school, Cody Mock, Tucker Kraft, tight end, and then Cody Mock, offensive tackle or guard. Probably a guard at the pros. People worry about his shorter arms, although it's first important contact if you have those shorter arms. And, well, we saw Mock down at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
No front teeth. Long curly hair, looks like a hockey player, looks like an offensive lineman. But people are wondering, is today the day to take some small school prospects? And again, it's not helmet scouting, but for me personally, the way this draft board is still shaken out, like there's enough talent there. I'm not going to Tucker Kraft just yet.
Yeah. Are you going to him at 68, or you think that's a little early for him?
Yeah. It depends on how many have slid.
Yeah.
I'm not going to him at 68. If we get to Saturday and you haven't had a tight end, then that's when I'm considering Tucker Kraft.
He's my tight end 7 right now.
Okay.
And thus, that's where I want to look at the board and see where it stands. I could actually, when we talked about Schoonmaker and you move down and a few picks and pick him, I think Tucker Kraft is in that conversation as well, and if you do manipulate it right, and I tip my cap to George Paton back in the 2021 draft for turning 1 3rd-rounder into 2 and getting Baron Browning and Quinn Miners. That's sort of the dream here, what you're looking for. If you could take pick 68 and through a couple of deals get 2 3rd-rounders, I'd love that. And then Tucker Kraft, maybe you're picking him at, say, pick 85, 87. I think that would be a good spot for him.
That would be a good spot for the Denver Broncos. Any surprise picks? Because last night we're watching the draft together. I feel Minnesota kind of punted on their draft because they couldn't move up for a quarterback and they didn't really get the player they wanted at corner. So would they take Jordan Addison, top of my head? So
Yes.
it was a little bit of a punt. Addison's fine. But I've had some people say, well, what about the Broncos getting an inside linebacker? I'm like, not with your first pick. No, it's not a great. I think Dayan Henley's been thrown around. I don't know if Mike Kliss is mystery mockster, which is not me. People have asked me, is like, is that you? Like, no, I love Mike. He's a dear friend. I'm not his mystery mockster, whoever the hell it is. But Dayan Henley, I think he had mocked to him. And I'm like, that's what, 67, 68. I'm not taking Henley there.
No.
Saturday, 6th round, I'm taking Henley.
Yeah, and I prefer inside linebackers on day 3. I mean, remember, you've got your 2 starters, and then you have Jonas Griffith behind Josie Jewell and behind Alex Singleton. And Griffith was the guy you intended to start last year.
Right.
You don't. That is actually a position where I'd say you don't have any kind of need. Period. If you're talking about Marte Mapu out of Sacramento State, day 3, that'd be great.
But is he an IOB or is he's like a hybrid safety linebacker or whatever?
That's one reason why I like rolling the dice on him, because then you get him in and you figure it out. But you're not asking him to be anything specific right away, because you've got your 2 starters and you've got an experienced backup behind them. So if something happens to Singleton or Jewell, you plug Griffith in, you move him up, and you're not worrying about the position. I mean, Griffith's not as spectacular in pursuit as Alex Singleton, going all over the place, but he's solid and he can do the job.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas some of these other positions on the roster, and that's where the conversation about corner could come into play, especially if they can maybe do some pick splitting and have 2 and move down and get an extra pick later in the 3rd round or in the 4th round. You could use another corner right now. And that's where, I don't think the Broncos are going to be in play for Julius Brents. But what about Terrell Smith as you get into round 4?
That'd be beautiful. And Julius Brent's probably one of those top 10 picks.
Yeah.
That we're thinking about going at the beginning of the 2nd round. But again, watch to see what happens with those quarterbacks. Will Levis be traded up for? Raiders, Rams? Is it Seattle? I'm so looking forward to today, man. Like, I did sleep. I crashed. Like, I worked late into the night. We did a late night show last night. I crashed. I did get some good sleep, but I just, you got to wake up. You got to get going, because today is a big day, history to be made for the Denver Broncos.
History to be made.
History to be made. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's a bold statement.
It's a bold statement, Cotton. Let's see if it works. Yeah, we'll see if George Payton and company get to work. That's why I wore my wheat ones. See these?
Oh, nice.
They look like Timberlands, but they're Jordans, because I was like, these are my work boots.
Those are like literally Jordan work boots.
Exactly. Time to get to work, baby.
I like that. That's it. But that's impressive. They make Jordan work boots.
Always start with the shoes and work the way up.
And you got the Jordan up top, too.
Exactly. I wanted comfort today. I knew it was going to be a long day. Mace, you're headed to Dove Valley.
I am, yes.
I'll be checking in with you tonight, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. I'm going solo on the fan. Mace is jumping on board with me when he can. And, of course, we'll keep you abreast and up to date on all the situations. And I, my friend, cannot wait.
Me either. Start unwrapping some gifts tonight, finally.
Exactly.
Last night, you watched everybody else get around the Christmas tree. Now it's your turn. What's left? What packet? What will be in the mystery box?
Mm-hmm.
You know, as was said on Family Guy, a boat's a boat, but a mystery box could be anything. Could even be a boat.
How about a nice football? That's right. It's orange and blue today.
What's a football?
Presented by Sean Ponda. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on Twitter. It is at Mace Denver. I am at Cecil Lammey. We certainly appreciate each and every one of you. Do those YouTube things, like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. I know it's annoying, but doing that stuff really, really helps the channel, so we appreciate you for that. He's Mace. I'm Cease. OBT is a BFD. We appreciate you all. Be safe. Be kind. Know that you are appreciated. Stay tuned, as always, please. Stay frosty.